Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, October 1st, 2024 to order. First, we'll have the land acknowledgement.
We acknowledge that the city of Kenmore is situated upon the ancestral lands of the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Soxhawtl, Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, and other tribes who are part of the Coast Salish peoples. We recognize and express our deepest respect for their enduring stewardship and profound relationship with this land, which they have cherished and protected since time immemorial. We honor the First Peoples, acknowledge their vibrant cultures, and commit ourselves to learning from their wisdom in our journey to promote justice, equity, and mutual understanding. We pledge to stand alongside these communities in acknowledging past injustices and working towards a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic. Oh, sorry.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Commissioners, I'd like to amend the agenda with your permission. Item number 1 is to insert after the comprehensive plan update land use element under our agenda items to include an introduction, comprehensive plan, and for amendment. And the second item is to insert Commissioner Saudry for excusal for tonight. Is there any objection? Hearing none, it's so ordered. Madam Clerk, do we have any one in the virtual audience other than our other commissioner?
There is no one for virtual public comment or in-person public comment tonight.
So we will go ahead past the public comments. And if there's, is there any comment on the consent agenda? Hearing none, if there's no objections, the consent agenda is approved. So we are now on our first working item, which is the comprehensive plan update housing element. Ladies and gentlemen who are listening, we will finish these amendments tonight, barring any unfortunate circumstance, and pass them for public hearing on next meeting, which is October 15th. So that's our plan tonight for the 3 items. Planner and
I appreciate
our beloved director.
Thank you. I appreciate the introduction and your commitment to getting through these 2 elements to get to public hearing. This will not be a last chance to review this. You've all been very diligent providing your comments, and we've incorporated them. So I would suggest, as you have seen these elements several times before, that to focus on the new items that are in front of you, and maybe even do it from exception or things that you really want to focus on, because these are still quite meaty elements. We've got a lot to get through, and so I'm still trying to keep you guys on track to get out of here by 9 o'clock and not midnight.
Thank you very much. So we will begin with page 1 and go up until existing conditions on page 5. Is there any questions or comments? Commissioner Olson.
One very brief comment.
You have to speak up, please.
One very, I think it's a small comment, but very just first line, line 15. access to adequate and affordable housing. I was considering just changing the word adequate to quality.
What I didn't get okay, I gotta look at adequate to
Quality. So that way I would read access to quality and affordable housing as opposed to just adequate.
There are comments on this? Comments from our staff? Is there objection to adding this to the document? Hearing none, it's added. I have a question, and this I would ask our beloved director for her advice and options. The last time we were before the council, we sort of got a half finger wagged, at least at me, for shoulds and shalls. And I expressed what I felt was our opinion, that we didn't want to box the city council into shells. But that didn't seem to go over that well. So I would like to ask your opinion of whether we should be doing shells or shoulds in these drafts.
Well, I think consistency is key. So I think in your prior elements, it's been more should than shall, for that very reason. So again, I think you can kind of say should, and you can take that as far or near as you want. Shall is definitely more definitive. It's I guess it's more of an art than anything else. But as you have used should in previous elements, I would recommend sticking with that.
Unless we really, really mean shall, correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I won't quote you in front of the council either. So we're just going to do, and thank you for supporting our theory on shoulds or shalls, which you probably have stated before. So, okay, let's go on. Have something? Oh, your hand go up. Which on page H3, and this is a comment throughout the draft. There's, for instance, in the line 28, history of discriminatory, racial, desperate land use, blah, blah, blah. Racially, I should say. There is a lot of use of the racially throughout this document. And I'm not certain that it's just a racial issue, and that we were looking at it at a broader definition of disparate, discriminatory and disparate land use for BIPOC, for disadvantaged populations within our city. So I wanted to bring this topic up because it finds itself throughout the document, and what the commission feel about that. Commissioner Olson.
I hadn't picked up on that, but I agree. I don't necessarily think it's simply or just a racial issue. That being said, I think it's important to acknowledge the direct racial links to land use and housing practices. But I see your point that we're potentially not looking at other types of discrimination, to your point, especially based off of class lines or things in that perspective or realm, right? So, I mean, to me, it would almost be perhaps adding a section that, I mean, potentially removing some of the items from the racially disparate land use and housing practices that are not necessarily specifically about race, and putting that into history of discriminatory practices, but, you know, having both.
Population, discriminated or.
Discriminated
or
populations.
And disadvantaged population.
Yeah,
Listen,
yeah.
I like that amendment, and I would also trust our planner to look through find the other words of racially, and so forth, and when it's appropriate to insert that language. How would you feel about that, Todd?
I can take a look at this just for context. We're racially disparate and the discriminatory being stricken. This is guidance that was given at the state level, Department of Commerce. And so we're following their direction, as well as the King County Affordable Housing Committee in the comments. So that's why a lot of these changes and the context and the wording as such is drafted. And so while I do agree with the suggestions, I just want the commission to be aware that where a lot of this, the majority of the changes are directly from Department of Commerce and their direction. So just wanted to state that for the record.
How would you feel this would comply if we put and historically disadvantaged?
Yeah, I think where it's appropriate to add that context, I think that's perfectly fine. I think as long as we're not changing the overall context of the message, but at least putting in that added language in there, I think that would be more than sufficient. Yeah.
And you would be glad to do some wordsmithing on
Sure.
those lines where it's appropriate.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I can do that.
That be your motion?
Yes, to add
We have a
historically
motion
marginalized,
to add
historically marginalized communities,
say
or
it again.
historically marginalized communities or
Yes.
populations.
Okay, as appropriate, with or without the word, well, when the word race, racially, or something like that is mentioned. Are no further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair Thompson, did you second it?
Yes. I
Okay.
did. I'm probably going to just do that as a course unless I think we need a second other than me. It's just it's a parliamentary procedure to move things quicker. Okay, so that's been passed. I have a question for Paul. So do you feel that the reference to the DEI is strong enough? Oh, we're still at 39 through the end of the paragraph there.
Well, we do, yeah, I mean, we included this in to mention that we do have a plan. We necessarily didn't have an entire paragraph about the DEIA plan, but we could possibly add more if the commission desires. I know we have, you know, the city spent a significant amount of time and effort on this plan. So if that's something that we want to have a larger discussion about, we could pull that out and maybe create its own separate section. So we could end it at the end
No,
of line 39 and then pulling out something about the DIA plan as a separate area, or we just make another paragraph in that same section and then just expand on it a little bit more.
Well, I don't know if I'm asking for a separate paragraph. Maybe added emphasis. DEIA. I guess I'm out of it tonight, but.
Well, it's right here on that line, diversity, equity, inclusion,
And
accessibility.
accessibility,
Yeah.
okay.
So that was the plan that was adopted in
Yes.
last year,
Yeah.
2023, and yeah, we just needed to note that. I don't know, the other option.
I think
Oh, go
another,
ahead.
how about this? Unless you think it's stated clearly somewhere else. This element, or, well, yeah, we have to speak about, this element should focus on implementation of the DEIA strategic plan or something like that. That means what we're saying is what you said here is that it's here. We got that, but an affirmative statement saying that it's supported and should be taken into account in this. That's just one sentence. Nodding their head.
Does the commission have suggested, or would you like staff to come up with?
Something like what I had said. Is that all right? Everyone's nodding, including Mr. Dorian, Commissioner Dorian. He's nodding too. Yes? I guess so. Otherwise, he'd raise his hand and poke at me. Okay. So if no objection, rough, straightforward sentence.
Yes, yep.
I would call it an affirmative sentence. Okay, any other comments before existing conditions? Hearing none, we're going to move from starting at existing conditions. Buzz. Now, we're going to go quite a ways, I think. Page 11-ish.
And just Chair Thompson, just for the record, for anybody watching the public, the commission recommended for both of these elements that we're reviewing tonight that in those areas that we added new language, there's different highlighted sections. So yellow being those that have already been reviewed, green being from a state agency or another group that's commented, and then blue as those suggested items from the planning commissioners. Some of which, you know, those specifically can be have a further conversation because they may or may not want to keep those, but they were inserted just for the sake of conversation this evening. So
on that point, I would like to say I can probably say on behalf of the commission, we appreciate all the work that you did in fixing and providing additional corrective amendments, and also want to call out Commissioner Dorian and Commissioner Banazinski for meeting the deadline and getting amendments to our esteemed planner, Mr. Hall, so that they could be included instead of dealing with it tonight. So first of all, does anyone in that area from 5 to about 11 have any comments? I think the, so, well, let's go to page 29 on 11. So the has permitted more than 16. I assume it's close to 16.
So, sorry, could you repeat the page number?
Oh, I'm sorry, page 11, line 29.
Okay, got it. Oh, here we go.
For all of our.
Yeah, yes. So that's an updated number. I don't know where 60, I got this directly from, directly from, commission or, development services. So these are updated numbers.
Only comment, we've been talking a lot about items of accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and we all, I think, hope it's going to be greater than that over a period of time. Now, land availability, is there any comparison to? Actually, I think you have another section. I made a comment in this section, and then you talk about exact land availability later in the draft. Am I correct?
Well, that's the land capacity analysis, which would still, we're waiting to receive that from the consultant. So we have a placeholder for that, but we need to still receive that information, which should be coming in the next few days.
Commissioner Banazinski.
Could we go back to page 11, please, that line 29? Why did the number go from 60 to 16? Is it because it's during a very certain time period and not a total or a cumulative number?
Yeah, that I don't know. I just sent this separate paragraph directly to the director of development services, and this was the number that she quoted was 16 as of 2022, not 60. I'm not sure where 60, maybe it was a typo, or I'm not quite sure.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It could have been 6. I don't know. But yeah, 10 attached and 6 detached. That's the total.
That's the total
That's the
since
total.
we've been keeping track. Okay, great, thank you.
Any further comments through page 11? Hearing none, we're going to move on from, we'll just take 5 pages. We'll go 12 through 16. I wanted to point out that on page 12, line 17 and 18, I know that has long discussions about affordability of missing middle housing. And point out line 17 that the average home sale in June of 24 was 1.055 million. This is a fairly high average price, and that I would see personally that some of the middle housing is going to be also in that range. Difficult to get even 80% in half, or probably a quarter or a third comment. I would think that the council would notice that. So, Now everything you added is in green, right? Green highlight.
So again, yellow is things that have been reviewed. Green is either staff or an agency or a group. And then blue is suggested by planning commission. Not blue. So for whatever reason, when we put the packet together, and my apologies, the text color, ignore that, just the highlights.
Thank
It
you.
needs to be black, but for whatever reason, when it gets printed or submitted, it's in blue. So that's, yeah, don't look at the color of the font, just the highlighted part.
Finally, for me on page 15, lines, line 20. So in 2020, it was not 0 homeless and unsheltered people in Kenmore. That's the implication of this paragraph, correct? Implied.
I don't know the history of that particular, do you? Paragraph?
15, line 20. I was just asking, the implication of that quote is that in 2020, it cannot be said that there were 0 homeless and I use that in a large term, in Kenmore.
I'm sorry, but I'm still not following how you get to there were 0 homeless in Kenmore.
Well, it says that it was 240 sheltered homeless individuals and 56 unsheltered homeless individuals living on the streets in North King County, which includes Bothell, Kenmore, Lake Forest Park, Shoreline, and Woodinville. I know that's a fairly large geographic, but could it be implied that
I don't think we can imply anything from that. I think what we're saying is we can't, we don't have the finer detail on which jurisdiction those individuals were in. So how you could, I don't think you can apply anything from that. This is just in this larger area, this is what the data found at this specific point in time in 2020. So I don't think you can imply that there was 0.
Thank you very much. I just didn't want to state something that staff would not agree with. Okay, so anything more before 16? Hearing none, we're going to move 16 to 21. Are there any comments 16 to 21? Hearing none, we'll go to 22. 22 to 27. When this goes to the council, they're going to see essentially a strikeout and underline.
Correct, yeah,
Correct,
so
okay.
they'll get the edited version.
But
So
not-
for the hearing, for all your hearings, we've provided both a clean copy and an edited version. Yeah, but
okay.
they get the the draft as amended.
But not with all the colors.
No, they get the yellow,
They get the
yellow
yellow for
version,
the
not with
changes.
green, blue, all that. No, it's just yellow. Yep. That's consistent with what we've done before.
Right, I just
Yep.
wanted to clarify, make sure we're,
Yep. No, we just did this particular element or this week's elements because there was so many different types of comments. We wanted to differentiate those between staff, commission, and existing.
any comments through 7? I don't want to disappoint you, so. Looking,
Commissioner,
oh,
yep.
oh, Commissioner Dorian.
Hey there. Back on 26, I just spotted an inconsistency now because there's 60 ADUs are referred to again on 26, right there, line 5. So that we would just need to make that consistent.
Oh, Kurt, yes. Yep, thank you.
No worries.
Good catch.
So around line 8 through 15, there's if, oh, this is, the manufactured housing has not been, the lawsuit has been, it was the tenant restrictions that was settled,
Yes, correct.
but not the manufactured housing.
Not yet.
Okay, great. And my other comment was on 26, line 14. Says that Habitat for Humanity will create 20 affordable for sale units. I question, because of the other, I see where you got the 60 ADUs, by the way, that's up in, but that's not what I'm talking about. So you struck out lines 7 through 12. So at what AMI are they going to be asked to do the 20 affordable for sale units?
My mind's just gone blank. I can get back to you on that. It was just presented to council.
Okay, so if
Give me a
you,
minute.
but is it one number for all 20 units?
It's
Something.
one.
I can just accept if the commission's willing, if you just insert that there, so that's clarified what 20 affordable really means. 30 to 50 is different than,
So it's, for the rental units is 50 to 60% of AMI and 80%, that's what I thought it was, but I wanted to double check. 80% AMI for ownership units.
okay, could that be in, at 80% AMI in that sentence? Just to spell that out, what the 20 affordable housing units will be built at. If that's okay with the mission.
I mean, we can keep it general for now. Right now, we're just at a letter of intent stage. And so we will developing a purchase and sale agreement, but that's what we're hoping for is 50 to 60% AMI for rental and 80% for ownership. So I don't know if we really need to be so specific in the housing element.
Because it's not firm yet.
It's not firm yet. That's
Okay.
kind of the letter of intent is saying these are the terms that we will be developing a purchase and sale agreement. And this was the range of AMI for rental, and this is the expectation for ownership.
I think keeping it general is a good idea at this point, because I think there's going to be some regulatory changes coming down the line that are going to provide state or county subsidies depending upon where these numbers lie. So I think not tying ourselves in.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fine with me.
Before you move on,
Oh, yes.
Oh,
going
Ken
back up
Vanderleen.
to line 5 and 6, that whole statement doesn't make sense in terms of where we are, both the numbers and the fact that we've already passed it.
You could just delete it, yeah. Yeah. Yep.
All right, so if there's no objection, we'll do that. Okay, so now I don't see any hands raised, so we're gonna go from page, we'll do goal H1 first. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Olson.
This is not necessarily a comment. I just want to bring this up for discussion. As I use some of this language myself in the land use elements, and I just wanted to review it given the shoulds and shall conversation. I think this is specifically the one I'm looking at is policy H-1.1.7 on page 27.
H-1- on page 27.
Line 35 and 36. And the policy reads, implement minimum property maintenance requirements to ensure the safety and livability of existing housing stock. So I like this objective. However, I also use the word implement and require. And those to me read almost like shall. And so I just wanted to ask, is there a way of potentially rewording this that has some sort of urgency, but also doesn't necessarily create kind of an unfunded mandate potentially, right?
Or what does our staff think?
I mean, it could be worded like the city could explore implementing minimum property maintenance instead of, like you suggest, committing ourselves to this because we don't know that yet, because implement sounds like this is imminent. So if we change the wording to that,
Like consider implement.
consider implementation or consider implementing.
Commissioner Dorian?
Hey, I just want to clarify what I think Council Member Shrednick's feedback was. I don't think it was necessarily the strength of well, there was a little bit of the strength of the should versus shall, but mostly she was suggesting we are consistent with what we've got here, which is the sentences tend to start with imperatives. So instead of saying the city should encourage homeowners to take, we just say encourage homeowners to take. So that was the context of the feedback. It wasn't about the strength of the imperative. It was just about not having the language, because the other elements don't. They all have this kind of, the policies start with an imperative. And I would just caution again, because if you look at the very next policy, that also starts with the word implement. So I think we could get into minutiae if we try and remove the, further up. There was the one about tenant protections. So policy H1.1.7 starts with implement. Policy H1.2.1 also starts with implement. So I think we might be spinning a bit when I think Councilmember Shrednick just meant start with the imperative, don't also add the city shall or the city should, and then add the imperative.
that makes some sense to me. I just wanted to bring that up because I was thinking about that.
So you're looking at that, considering the comments, you're good the way it's at. Okay. So is there any other comments before beyond H1?
Sorry, I do just want to clarify. I'm good with this particular policy. I do think it's worth reviewing the individual policies with this type of language because I could see some being burdensome, depending on the types of actions it obligates the city.
So we need to get this straight. So give us your line numbers that you're concerned about.
I'm not concerned about any line numbers in this document at this time. I just wanted to mention that, like, while I'm fine with this particular policy using this language, I think it's still worth considering that given the context.
Okay, great. All right, so no further conversations. Well, I went through page 27 last time, so we're going to start with, H1. We're on H1, that's right. That's going to bring us all the way down 4 ways. Excuse me. I suppose to say that for me, the last sentence, line 16 on H1.3.8, page 30, from the last sentence, and that would be on 16 through 18. I'm lost with the as of right density. Versus the as of wrong density. So go ahead, Ms. Ben.
At this point, I don't know if we should include this because it's not clear what it is or the point of this.
Yeah, we were just talking about this today, and with the development service director, and this was one that we actually removed from our consideration. So I suggest that we just not consider this line. This was a suggestion, recommendation from FutureWise.
Are
But
you?
we're okay with removing it. Our recommendation is to remove it.
So the staff's recommendation is to remove the line starting on 16 through 18. And is there any objection? So ordered. Commissioner Olson.
All right, I don't want to slow this process down, but I am
You're doing
curious.
fine. This is what it's all about.
I am curious what they were trying to say with this line. I mean, perhaps it's not clear in this, but what was the intent from FutureWise?
I'd have to bring up the memo when they.
Okay.
Yeah,
In the meantime, does anyone else have anything on H1 that's left? Water down the wrong pipe. Yes, Commissioner Olson.
Just a small note on Page 30, line 8, it says design energy efficient housing that incorporates renewable energy sources. like
Line, what, 8?
8, yeah, page 30, policy H-1.4.10. And I'm proposing after housing, just saying housing, insert the word standard. So it says design energy efficient housing standards that incorporate renewable energy sources like solar and wind power to maximize sustainability. Just so that way we're not accidentally saying we're designing housing.
Use the word designing instead of design.
No, just insert the word standards after housing or not necessarily standards.
Housing standards that incorporates.
Yeah. Thought process being right now, the way I read it, it sounds like the city would be designing housing that incorporates these things, not necessarily standards that apply to housing.
Don't want to bog us down here, but looking at that, I'm thinking about design here. City's not going to design,
Implement.
implement, adopt, consider.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I would make a correction. I would propose that we change or amend policy H-1.4.10 to say implement energy efficient housing standards that incorporate no plural.
Okay, so if there is no objection from our staff and no, right now, and no objections from council members, we'll go ahead and adopt that change. There's a problem, are free to deal with it. Is that okay? Right. Now we're still at this other thing. Did you were able to find any information, or you want us just to move on to H2?
I think what we can do is, if it makes sense, to add anything regarding faith-based properties to encourage affordable housing, we can add it in. That's really what they're trying to get to. And I don't think it will, really how it's written, adding the green, I don't think helps.
And just reading from their comment letter, it says H1.3.7 be 100% as of right to give religious property owners more options. All of the housing is required to be affordable to households earning incomes that are less than 80% of the adjusted median income. The proposed policy and its implementing regulations should also include a simple and expedited process that gives the religious landowner the option of preparing a custom plan for the site that would allow more affordable dwelling units to better fit the scale of the neighborhood. So they suggested the addition of that sentence. That's the context. So again, that's up, which is 1.3.8 because the numbers shifted. So it's one, yeah, it's that one on the screen, 1.3.8.
I would say the language you just read to us, to me, makes consistent with bills that have already been passed by the state. I don't think that language in green that same sense. They either include all of that language question is, do we have a cover what may be the intent here, add the language that you just summary of that.
Well, that was the language that they provided.
doesn't
So,
do it.
yeah, I mean, they provided that narrative and then they gave us that sentence to add to the policy. So I don't know if that was clear enough, but that's what they suggested.
Yeah, it's just when I read that section that's in green, doesn't necessarily, in my mind, lead to congruence with the narrative that they give. Interpreted in many ways as of right.
Or wrong.
So I would just either strike this entirely and move on.
Well, that's what we suggested, is just
That's what I would
removing
say.
it.
That
I think
feels-
we understand the intent. And I mean, really what this policy is I think Debbie alluded, is we support working with our faith-based institutions that are here in Kenmore to try and work with them to accommodate affordable housing if it's something that's desirable for them and it works out. So I think that's not something that the city is opposed to by any.
So we're gonna take the green out,
We decided that earlier. I think we're just reaffirming that
and that's.
in the
we're gonna leave it.
conversation. So yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so if there's no objections, we're taking that sentence
Yeah.
with the green, the whole sentence out.
Yeah. Yeah. We just reaffirmed it.
Right, here we are. Hope we did the right thing. So we're off to H2.
So just a context on goal H2, this was just some additional suggested language, and staff agrees, just to further strengthen that goal, provide housing opportunities and zone sufficient land in Kenmore to accommodate projected housing needs for vulnerable populations. So we agree with that. So it makes sense.
Any further comments on H2? Seeing none, we're going to go to H3.
And these are, I don't know if we wanted to step back on H, these policies as suggested by Commissioner Dorian. These were ones I believe came, Commissioner Dorian, these were ones, just to clarify, for commerce and that, but I just wanted to reword them so that we're not taking them verbatim straight from commerce, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And I mean, looking at it, the one that I would potentially even raise a question about, though it's one that I put in there, is that first one, the policy H-2.1.4. I don't know. I'd be interested in how other commissioners feel about that. So distribute housing for vulnerable populations throughout the city. The only reason I raise that is that I know often in the past the commissioner has been keen to keep certain types of housing closer to transit. And because this came from commerce, this could be for cities that have multiple locations that have transit centers. I forget which city it came from actually as the example, but that's where that one, as I was rereading this, I was just thinking, I'd be interested in getting the commission's thoughts on whether that feels right for Kenmore or not.
Commissioner Vanderline.
I agree with Commissioner Dorian's reservations. I think we use the word. Don't know that the city would. I think we can confirm our intention to places for vulnerable populations throughout the city. Don't know that we can actually get a calculation here of how you distribute it. Can't even control what's the inputs. How do you distribute
Commissioner Olson.
Dying to speak.
I'm sorry, I'm just very excited because you stole the words out of my mouth that I wrote down on this page. I was proposing a change and Commissioner Dorian as well. I think this is the only one of these that I was noticing anything that I had thoughts on, and it goes to the distribute piece as well. And so I was considering rewording this to say zone housing to allow for a distribution of vulnerable populations throughout the city. So not requiring it, not pushing it, but not through the types of zoning that we have throughout the city, preventing its construction or implementation.
The one point would be is zoning is just one element of I think, what was the original one was, said it before, court or something anyway, but Director Bain.
You could make it similar to the tone of the policy above and say support housing for vulnerable populations. City, if you were concerned about the distribution aspect.
Or encourage one.
Or allow.
I suppose to me the intent behind this, and perhaps I'm interpreting this differently than others, but the intent behind this policy is to try and address historic warehousing of people, right? Where effectively we have all of the services and low-income folks in one part of town, and allow for that change. So I'd be interested in, keeping distribution or support and changing the language to support. I agree zoning isn't necessarily quite the right way to address this. We don't really zone around that, right? So, yeah.
Motion. But
I'll take a stab at it.
thank you.
I would delete the word distribute and substitute allow.
It's been moved on line 13 to strike the word distribute and insert the word allow. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Are there any nays? Hearing no nays, the motion is unanimously adopted. So, okay, are we done with 2 8 now?
Well, there's just one more batch. I don't know if.
Oh, yeah, people should have read these batches.
Yeah,
I'm
Commissioner
assuming.
Dorian, if you had any additional questions or context on these ones that were reworded that you provided, but yeah, that's.
Is there any further comment or discussion on H2 blue? Okay, that's it for H2. Then we're going to H3. Commissioner Banzinski.
This is a question about policy H3.1.3 now, which is on page 33, line 33. I'm guessing since there's been some editing that I'm just going to raise the same question. I think I've already asked it a couple times, which is just to say that I'm guessing that it is resolved since there's been some editing. Is this taking an incremental approach consistent with HB 1110? It still is.
Yeah, that's a good.
I guess it depends on what you think an incremental approach
Incremental, yeah,
is.
You
Yeah,
could take that a different,
yeah.
Commissioner Vanderleen.
My thinking is perhaps this particular policy has
yeah.
passing of 1110, the incremental approach is no longer an option for middle housing density and give it.
Yeah, but that's where my brain
I would
was.
just take this out.
My brain was heading in that direction, and I think there's enough new policies in the element that kind of address the need for, well, that we have to address middle housing. So I think that's a good point.
Commissioner Olson.
I read this and to me, incremental just means the next step. And so when I read this, I don't necessarily want to attach middle housing or density to it. I personally like it and just say, take an incremental approach to it, expanding housing opportunities in the city, where it's the next step. If you have an area that's not very dense, the next step might be middle housing. If you have an area that's more dense, the next step might be higher density development. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing. So I personally would be for keeping it and just removing middle and just keep saying housing opportunities. That being said, I would welcome discussion and opposition, frankly.
Is there a motion on the floor? Well, I know there's no motion on the floor, but does someone want to throw one on the floor?
I move to
You
strike.
have not been recognized, Commissioner Vanderleen.
Just to respond to your comment, I think we state pretty clearly elsewhere within comprehensive plan our intention to solve both high, medium, and low density. I think it's more than an implication here that it needs to be adjustment only related to those. So again, I think particular policy is vague enough that I don't think, unless we went into a long explanation of by incremental, and we're prepared to bring that to the city council, I don't think that this adds value.
So do you have a motion, Commissioner?
I would move that we strike policy H3.3.
Second.
It's been moved for that strike. Is there a second?
Second.
Been seconded. Further discussion? Chance, Commissioner Olson.
I mean, I'm persuaded by that logic. If it's elsewhere in the document, I am okay striking it. I just wanted to voice my thoughts on that to the commission.
And that's what you're here for. So feel good about that. Commissioner Banaszewski, I saw the fleeting lower arm come up.
You did. That happened. I'm debating with myself in my head. I wonder if there is value to keeping the idea of favoring an incremental approach to expanding housing and all development in our community for that matter, because I have seen this language used by some proponents of like new urbanism and strong towns. This idea that we should let our neighborhoods develop kind of organically and incrementally. And I feel like that is that feels to me like a response to a different way of thinking about development that may have tried to cluster or keep certain kinds of development in places and not in other places. And so I wonder from that perspective if it's worth keeping the idea that do we want to foster, what kind of idea about development do we want to foster in our community? And does this policy contribute to a certain way of thinking that would be beneficial for us that we want or not? I'm not arguing for a certain position really, but those are thoughts that I'm having.
No, that's point of discussion. Is there further discussion? Commissioner Benaziski would like to do a motion to amend the amendment. So you're happy with the amendment then? I'm not saying you should be, I'm just, you're done, okay. Now, I don't see any hands from the cloud, it's still there though. So, the motion on the floor is strike policy H-3.1.3 that exists on page 33, line 33 and 34. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say so by saying aye.
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 That thumbs up out there in the cloud. Thumbs up. And the chair votes aye, so it's a unanimous amendment.
Can I verify who seconded? What, was it Chris? Okay, thank you.
Right, so we are now back down to H4. Bring up, this is your last chance for H3. We've got to get moving through this. Saying if you want to. Okay, H4 is starts on page 36. Oh, I have a question on line 50. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Commissioner Dorian, thank you.
Back on 36. Towards the bottom, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the exact line item. Here we go. 43, 44. I guess there is a problem to including this here. I'm just aware that a couple of weeks ago, well, never mind. Not worth it. I'm going to retract my suggestion. I would talk about that. Just interesting because it had come up recently, but I don't think there's anything we need to address in the policy. So I'll be quiet.
Okay, Commissioner Dorian has retracted his yellow hand. So, Commissioner Olson.
Could I get clarification on the intent? I'm assuming the intent is to remove or sorry, eliminate parking requirements, not necessarily parking within a mile of major transit stops, correct? Sorry, for line 43, page 36.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the context of FutureWise's recommendation because this came from them. And they said that amending the development regs to reduce the cost of producing housing and encourage more affordable housing in the city by eliminating parking requirements close to transit stops. This will help facilitate infill development, multimodal transportation, and affordable housing. So that's by making this change, that's supporting that effort.
Go ahead.
I would like to make a motion just to add the word requirements after parking on line 43. So it would read, adopt regulatory changes, including eliminating parking requirements within a mile of major transit stops. It gets a bit redundant though at this next part, sorry.
Okay, let's start. We're on page 36, line.
Page 36, line 43.
Okay,
And
go ahead.
change, add requirements after the highlighted green parking and then delete reducing parking requirements immediately after the first green highlighted section. Got it.
Are you striking any language?
Oh.
Yes, striking.
Okay, so you have to speak slowly and clearly into the microphone, please.
So at the end of line 43, adding requirements. And then on lines 44 and on line 1 of page 37, striking reducing parking requirements.
Any comments from staff? Be a good head nods for you there. It's been moved and seconded, that amendment as stated by Commissioner Olson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Are there any nays? Seeing none, the amendment is unanimously adopted. I have a question on line page 38. Policy page 4.2.13. How deep do we have to go? Deepest levels. That sounds, like we're taking a submarine somewhere. Now I'm a little being facetious, but still, it's an interesting sentence.
Oh, this. Oh, okay.
I think I read through it and I didn't see any reference to deep. I think I know what they mean, but do they mean extensive or complete?
Yeah, I mean, we could change that, Nate, the wording of that. Partner to address.
You want to take that
All
on as an
levels
admin
of
change?
affordable housing, I mean, it could be simple as that. Various levels of affordable housing or
Okay,
the,
I'm willing to take that one. I will move to strike deepest and insert. What did you say you wanted? The various levels?
I said either, I think various or,
I like various.
Yeah.
Okay. Go with various, so. And then that's moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Vanderleen. Go ahead, Commissioner Banazinski.
I agree that deepest levels feels murky. And at the same time, I do think that all of the bullet points under it, I feel like are speaking to the needs of housing at the lowest AMI levels, if not shelters. So I do feel like all of these are about not just partnering to provide all levels of affordable housing, which I do think we should do, to be clear. But this policy does seem to try to get at housing for people at the lowest AMI, and yeah, I guess like 0 to 30%, isn't that the lowest category of AMI?
So if you're actually moving to strike various and deepest and insert
lowest.
partner to address at the lowest levels, lowest AMI levels. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Then moved and seconded. Is there, are we good on that? You do, Madam Clerk, or?
I didn't catch that.
Okay, so
Sorry.
instead of essentially, instead of, well, we're going to strike deepest.
But you had a motion to change various. You made a motion and Commissioner Vanderlyn seconded. And
then
now
she
we're
amended
talking
the
about
motion.
Commissioner Banazinski amending
My main motion.
motion.
So we're not going to
Okay.
use various. And you're going to say again, instead of various, you're putting in. Well, let's,
I just have a comment that complicates my observation, which is the last bullet point under that policy, which is on page 38, lines 18 to 21. That is the only bullet point that I see that unless I'm wrong, I don't think that that applies to people from 0 to 30% AMI. I feel like home ownership would require one, unfortunately, to be at a much higher level of AMI. So that's the only one that doesn't seem to fit to me. With my observation that these all seem to be about providing housing for folks who earn from 0 to 30% AMI. So I think if we do want to amend this one to say partner to address
the original motion was various instead of deepest.
yeah, I guess that could fit, or striking that last one and really focusing in on partnering to address levels of affordable housing for those at the
Okay,
lowest
so
levels of income.
as the point of order then is that you're retracting your motion for various, for to change the word various.
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, so now before us is the original motion, which is to strike deepest and insert various. Is there further discussion? Commissioner Olson.
Sorry, I didn't mean to rub the mic there. I just quickly looked up deeply affordable housing and it looks like there is a legal definition for it that qualifies it as affordable to extremely low income people who have incomes below 30% AMI. Would it be potentially worthwhile to just have a star and just like a.
So what was the reference that you said you looked on the.
I just looked it up online on Google.
Well, what's the reference under Google? There's usually a reference. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is, oh gosh. I just clicked on the first one here, which is Law Insider, but there's other sources that appear to match this. That being said, some of them are saying it's generally considered. So that's why I was thinking it might be worthwhile to just put the definition.
So deepest would be still correct.
Yeah, well, specifically deeply affordable housing is how it's
Or
defined.
deeply
Yeah, yeah.
would be better.
I believe that's what it says, right? Are we looking at line 9 on page 38, or am I looking at the wrong spot?
Well, Commissioner Vanderlyn.
Yes, I think you just addressed my concern. Talking about various, I think you need to have more definition there to make it endable. Otherwise, all of these bullets could mean something or could be applied to various levels. The intent here is deep. Have a definition of deepest as at or below 30% of AMI. I would just reword this to say that.
We could add a footnote also to what deeply affordable means.
So as luck would have it, I found a recent slide presentation from the Department of Commerce that was given to planners such as myself, which I don't remember being on this one. But in any case, it says right on the page, deeply affordable housing, which is less than 50% AMI, is how they've defined it. So it says that's for defining those within urban growth areas. So deeply affordable housing and their definition is those that's below 50. Now you could say, I mean, 30 is definitely, I don't know, I want to say really deep, but it's deeply affordable. But that's how they've stated. So they say, develop strong policies to encourage deeply affordable housing. This is how it's stated on the Commerce. Incentivize deeply affordable housing. So they've used the term pretty regularly throughout their presentation that they provided. So they're saying deeply is below 50%.
If there's no objection, the chair withdraws his main motion. Or is there objection? So now we're back to the original. I don't see anything from the cloud. So we're back to the original language. So is there now a new motion? Commissioner Olson.
I move to add a footnote adopting the Department of Commerce's definition.
Yeah. What are you adopt? I mean, are you changing deepest to deeply?
I believe it reads deeply currently.
Say again.
I believe it reads deeply currently. I think it says deeply affordable on line 9.
No, line 50.
Oh my gosh, am I on the wrong page?
Yeah, line 50, page 38. Line 50, page 38.
I was reading the wrong thing. I'm sorry.
But it's okay. I don't apologize
think
too
we
much because it's
understand.
all relevant. So I
Yeah,
think all we're
for
trying
sure.
to get at is the deepest levels of affordable housing, and then we can put a footnote to
Yep.
define what the deepest levels of affordable housing is. And if we do that, then you don't need to change Commissioner Olson line 9 on.
And if I may, just to be consistent with, this can just be an editorial. Instead of deepest, it'll be deeply affordable housing. Then it's consistent with Commerce, and then I'll put a footnote, and then that would be easy to do.
There's a motion on the table from Commissioner Olson, striking deepest on line 50 and inserting deeply. And the motion is seconded. Is there further discussion on this deep motion? Commissioner Olson.
Strike levels as well as deepest. So it would read partner to address deeply affordable, or sorry, levels and of deeply. So it just would read partner to address deeply affordable housing. Striking deepest levels of.
I accept that as a friendly amendment. So now the full motion amendment is partner to address deeply affordable housing. This is okay, well, no, we gotta dig ourselves out of this deep hole. So
Becoming deeply concerned.
This may be your last deep motion, Commissioner Wyrick. Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, it's passed unanimously, seeing no downward fingers from the guy in the sky. Okay, now, do we have any more amendments on H2? Back to, whoops. Moving on to, that was H3, I'm sorry. Yeah, H4, we're still on H4. That will bring us down to line 34 on page 40, which is H5. Further comments or amendments? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to place this amended element forward to public hearing. Oh, I'll strike that. Go ahead.
This is just I don't know, a point of information. I have a question of clarification. Where, I didn't read anything in here that documented our recommendation on middle housing and where those types will be in Kenmore. And I would like to know how that happens and where that is. Because I may have missed it.
Page 33. Policy 831, expand allowed residential housing types in traditionally single-family zoned areas to include 6 of the 9 approved housing types. That's the middle housing policy there.
Can you say again where that is? I'm sorry, the page?
Page 33.
33, okay. Line 36, expand.
6.
Okay,
Right
So
here.
we haven't, what this doesn't do is say exactly where. That's the implementation piece.
Yeah, that's the part that the commission is gonna be working on with our consultant when we flush through all the regulations. Yeah, this is just policy based.
So I know that there's concern about where the housing types are allowed, specifically in R1 and R4.
Mhm.
We have to kind of allow the 6 of the 9 types, and there's flexibility in how you do that.
yeah,
The question though is where and how, and I understand that's your concern, but
yes.
this is kind of leaving it broad enough so that when we get to the implementation piece and develop the regulations, that's where we'll have this discussion on implementation.
Okay, that's very
Does that make
helpful. Yes,
sense?
and that's
Okay.
helpful. Thank you, Debbie.
Entertain a motion to conclude discussion on this element and place it for public hearing before the Planning Commission on October 15th. Is there so move?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to place it to public hearing October 15th. Is there any further discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? No nays, then the motion is unanimously adopted. Now we're going to go to next item of business, which is land use element. We're going to take a stand up for about 5 minutes. are now on the land use element, and we're going to go on this through line 11 on page 3 first. There any comments or anything else? No, okay. Excuse me, would you go up a second? Oh, okay. It's just something that's highlighted on yours in a different color, but that's fine with me. Any further discussion? Okay, Commissioner Olson.
Minor point, line 17 on L1. Just adjusting, or I guess striking that first and then putting a comma after parks. So it'd read open space preservation, parks, and recreational areas. Just, yeah.
Oh, the and before the parks.
Yeah, just striking that.
So let's consider that administrative.
Yep.
Next. Okay, so now we're going to go to existing conditions. That starts on line 12, and then we're going to go down a ways. We'll go to page 8 from there.
Well, did we want to just pause for one moment on page L3? So this one was brought up by Commissioner Dorian and asking on, we have this large,
Yes.
pretty lengthy section on the white settlers of Kenmore, but didn't spend as much time in other ends. And the question is how much of this should we keep of this section? Commissioner Dorian, I don't know if you want to provide any additional commentary on your suggestion.
Yeah, somewhat that was stream of consciousness, because I made a note to myself to go and check other comp plans to see if they had similar sections. And I guess I just took a look at Bothell's, which I know doesn't mean that we have to do what Bothell did, but it seems that it's more focused on talking about the land use than it is about name checking specific historical figures. So the challenge that I've got, I'm aware of our time. I don't think we necessarily, well, we certainly don't have the time to do that right now, but I would just be interested in commission's thoughts around this as well. It's like that. Does this feel disproportionate in the amount of time we're spending name checking historic figures amongst the white settlers versus focusing on the land use? Or are we okay with it in terms of it being descriptive of Kenmore's land use historically?
Are there any comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Benzinski.
I think it's certainly the amount of time we've devoted to white settler history compared to the amount of time or space we've devoted to Native Americans, I think does kind of belie a certain point of view. But I don't really know how to address that. It just remind me that, history gets told by a certain perspective and from certain people, and that kind of, leaves some people out. And I guess I could see how that could be happening here. And again, I don't really know how to address the disparity in the amount of detail that's provided in one section versus the other.
Commissioner Vanderleen.
I appreciated reading this terribly approval of the white settler nomenclature for that. If we had said something about Kenmore history. But at the same time, I'm reading through this, and I'm not sure that either the whole history section really adds anything. The rest of the land use element. If this wasn't here, I don't think we would be missing anything. Rest of the land use element. So I'd be happy, or I'd be okay with striking both of those sections, or combining the two of them and relabeling it something like historical narrative or something. I don't see that this adds anything. I don't believe it's required.
I mean, I think what we could probably do is, I agree, there's a lot of detail here. And, you know, we could kind of maybe, if you would allow staff to do some editing here. I mean, if it starts off as abundant timber lord settlers to the Kenmore area in the 1860s, and then you could kind of really delete the rest of that paragraph and even the next paragraph, because it's about, you know, personal histories, and kind of just focus on the implications for land use.
The staff has proposed
But I mean,
to allow them to make edits in these two sections or put them together, and to delete the length of the entire section that we've been talking about. So that is what the staff, is their objection to that? Is that what we want to do? Commissioner Dorian.
I think what I just heard Director Bent describe aligned with what I was hoping for. So I would be supportive of giving that direction or making that request rather of staff to make those edits. That sounds along the lines of what I was hoping for.
Commissioner Banazinski.
It struck me as we were talking about this that I recalled reading a little bit more about the indigenous history of the land, but it is down in a different section under Tuala Khadis Park. So some of that could maybe be brought forward. Another thing that I think might be helpful in sort of like shifting our perspective on history is that oftentimes I feel like these stories get recounted as like very neutrally, as in like this just, oh, there were indigenous people here for thousands of years, and then this happened, and there was lumber, and there was a shingle mill, and I think we can't stop at acknowledging kind of the disruption and harm, then displacement that was caused at that point. But I think making it visible in documents like these can kind of remind us about kind of the fuller arc of history, just that there was displacement and tribes were kind of moved. They were moved from their usual and accustomed hunting and fishing grounds, and then everything else happened. So maybe if there could be some acknowledgement of that too, that would flesh it out a bit.
So what is your position on the suggestion to allow the staff to make edits? Okay. Is there any objection to allowing the staff to make appropriate edits to, and changing also more like you suggested, historical background for Kenmore or something like that, rather than term white settlers or whatever? Okay. Right, so there's no objection to that, so the staff will be so kind to. Now we're on historic structures. which starts on page 5.
So just one editorial, since we were just talking about it, we added Tlaquettes Park to recognize the significance of that site. And I think also in the context of the discussion we just had with the history of it, it's important to note that the, indigenous peoples that inhabited this area, we can incorporate some of that same language above into that narrative, but also include it as this parks site, which the city has recognized it in 2021. So it kind of plays out in two separate areas, one being a site, but also the peoples that we can further emphasize in the narrative of the history of Kenmore, if that makes sense.
Any further comments? Well, I have a few comments.
We need that. Oh yeah, and then I did make a note, sorry, the next page, that we're gonna be updating this map to show that, because it doesn't currently show. This will be modified.
Well, my first comment is that I think we need to reorganize the list. And you'll understand that by my next comments. So, St. Edward's Seminary, that's on the register. Got it. And the community clubhouse, Kenmore Community Clubhouse, is on the local register. Got it. So after you get there, maybe this is the place where you put the park. But I just cannot see, well, and also some of the information here is not worded rightly, like Aqua Club. 1959 was when clubhouse was built. Then Inglewood Golf Course, it's been here since 1919, and it's not higher up on the list, and it's not well explained that it has much more of a history in both its establishment and what it has done, as well as being a central part of Kenmore. Then below that, you've got St. Thomas Seminary that's been here since 58, which still is in Al Bastir University, and is much more of a major part of our community. Now I'm a swimmer, so I gotta tell you, I'm not after swimmers here. But they have a championship swim team. Now they have a championship summer league swim team. It's not like high school or US swimming or something like that. Now I understand the Kenmore Air Harbor House. Although I think that probably, if we're going to do that, we should probably put what's down in another section up into here to explain a little more about, that's from 1940s. And I'm still trying to figure out why the two churches are on this list. But I'm open to, I'm not trying to be just Catholic churches, but I mean, I don't see the building. When is 1960? The other guy, church was designed by the same guy that designed the canvas. I'm not, and opened in 64. And I just don't get it.
Well, some of them is for the architectural, oh God, whatever it's called in the sixties, thank you, mid-century modern, that's why it's on there. So just because it's in from the sixties, there's still some, that's still looked at as having significance in its architectural features.
Would the staff be willing to supplement both of those to that, to bring up that information so that it's clear, Commissioner Olson?
Something that was recommended, or I guess commented on a previous element by Nancy out in the audience, was including images. I'm wondering if potentially having just like pictures of some of these structures is a possibility. I would be open to critique, but I don't know. I live by the Church of the Redeemer, and it is a striking building. So I just wanted to bring that up as see what the commission thought. Maybe potentially just adding that for context.
Okay, well, I think if we clearly, well, I don't know what.
I mean, I'll just make a general comment. Typically in land use elements, we don't have a lot of pictures of things, and that would be reserved for like to say the Kenmore Historical Society, or which is where some of this information, to be honest, I pulled the information from their webpage and or History Link, which is another page that's Seattle, Puget Sound centric. It's been organized for the past, I don't know, 30 plus years, and has been building ever since with all kinds of information on different historical sites and buildings and historical significance. So, I mean, I think there's other ways for folks to get it, but at a minimum, if we wanted to, which I think Chair Thompson, you were getting at, with respect to the two churches, we could put a footnote and say that these are on the list, you know, because of their significance of mid-century modern significance or something like that, just on the bottom, so that it's called out.
I would be perfectly happy with that myself. I don't know about the rest of the commission. I think so too. Now, I want to go back to Aqua Club though. So what's, I'm still trying to figure out what is it, just because it was the first one of first party house in Kenmore, other than the taverns or the club? I mean, the other club. Well, did you know that Englewood Club has one of the few and oldest actual speakeasy original piece up in their attic? It's not taken apart. It's behind a door that you wouldn't, I got a little tour and they showed me it, and it's actually still put together.
I was there today.
You've actually seen it. You know what I'm talking about. No, I'm not talking about that. It's up in.
Yeah.
Oh, you really mean what I'm talking about? Yeah. So it's. Yeah, that's. But you know, it's just an interesting point of history because you don't see those around anymore. But I don't know if we want to say the golf. I'm sorry, we're losing it. I'm losing it. Okay, so back to the Aqua Club. Is this still on your, is this on the Seattle hit list, or is it just the Kenmore history list?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Debbie might, but I think this is just a local significant, possibly could be another building of mid-century modern because it was in the 50s. That's my guess.
And that explains a little bit. Oh. unlike the others which we just identified, relic reasons, in other than being there, offering programs, I do not understand why the clubhouse,
if you could just kind of, I think if there's a reason for it to be on the list, whether it's of architectural significance, and I think there was a historical survey that was done in 2010, 2011. So if that building was identified as part of that local historical survey, we can kind of make note of that as why it's included in here, so that there is a reference point for including it in this list of historic buildings.
And I just found it, luckily, and it's the same as the churches. So
Okay.
what it says is the Up Lake Terrace properties, many of those houses, including the Aqua Club, have a significance of, mid-century modern architecture. And so just like the churches, which we mentioned, we can also note that. I can rearrange these. I think I agree.
I think that, yes.
I agree with the importance of some of the other buildings, meaning the seminary building and those that have
the
a
park.
larger prominence in Kenmore can be shifted to the top. And then some of these other ones can be rearranged but then grouped together. So I would offer that.
And I would be willing to accept those amendments to Aqua Club as you would deem appropriate. And it really is 50s.
Yeah.
Definitely. I don't know how much it's been updated, but okay. So the staff has agreed to reorganize. Is that okay with the commission? Do you update some of the descriptions? Okay, in the cloud up, that's a thumbs up. Down to I had a question on the existing land use map. That is not coordinated or integrated or whatever with environmental zones, correct?
Yeah, so again, I think I
That's-
might
that's
have
all I
mentioned
need.
this last time. So the comp plan or map, or also in planning nomenclature, future land use map. This is a kind of a mirror of the implementing zoning map. So we're going to make some minor changes to the future land use map or comp plan map, to one being the North Shore School District amendment that came to you earlier this year. That's that little tiny parcel down next to Inglemore High School that they purchased for future parking or other use. And then some of the other publicly owned parcels that we just need to designate. Other than that, there's nothing major being changed for this. Now, the zoning map, which is not going to be majorly changed, again, for the similar reasons that I just pointed out, but that's going to need some work next year based on what we're talking about with middle housing, because that's going to need, no longer will we have R1, R4, that kind of thing, but that's a discussion for a later time, so we don't need to go into that.
Any further discussion on that part? Future land use, on page 12, asking the importance of line 8 and 9. Because we always speed in the one. I know they never, well, King County enforces it. Enough said. Okay.
I mean, I think, you know, those couple of paragraphs were shortened just to kind of remove some of its wordiness, which we talked about before, but then we're just noting that, you know, you've got these two runways and then this is just moderate or reduce. I mean, honestly, if the commissioner wants to remove it, you're not really gaining or losing anything by keeping it or deleting it. So I guess that's the commissioner's discretion.
Commissioner Banazinski.
I do not mind either way if that clause about the speed limit is in. I do have a comment about this section. Do other people want to talk about the speed limit more? No?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a very simple editing thing, I think. I noticed that when I got down to, this is page L11, when I got down to line 32, along with passenger services, I realized that it had been, that aspect of what goes on there had been put up higher in the text on line 4. And so I think it's just redundant and that can be
Redundant, yeah.
taken out. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, so removing lines 32 through 36.
I don't know if you want to remove all of them, but whatever was moved up the redundancies can be cleaned up.
The administrative.
Yeah,
yes.
and I think Todd, you'll know what's redundant and what isn't.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll take a look.
So with no further discussion, we're down to future land use, line 12 on page 12. Whatever. Commissioner Dorian, did you want to comment on not?
Yeah, my only thing is, so we talk about transit-oriented development and then centered on the Metro Sound Transit Park and Ride. I don't know that that is in the center of a transit-oriented development, like geographically, or because they've pushed the timeline back kind of indefinitely, even as like a centerpiece at this point. So that was just, I was just questioning the term of transit-oriented development is centered around the park and ride.
Oh, Commissioner Banzinski, I'm sorry.
So I wonder, Commissioner Dorian, if we just said transit-oriented development, including the Metro Sound Transit Park and Ride, would that address that concern? Instead of saying we're centering it on it, just saying that that is included in.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So that's an administrative edit. Correction, then we'll call that administrative edit. So that brings us down into development capacity. On line 17, I'm not sure about where critical areas is not commented on here on the partially developed residential lots, and that's one reason that is. So I don't know if that's really necessary, but it says one home is located on a large parcel that, according to zoning, could be further subdivided is considered to be undeveloped. Now, it does say above, vacant due to environmental constraints. Or you could say partially developed and partially developed due to environmental constraints. I could live with that.
Yeah, this might change a little bit due to the land capacity, but I also just want to point out that this language generally is crafted around the buildable lands information that we're provided from King County does a buildable land study every 5 years, and so that's where this kind of narrative is crafted around. But again, the land capacity analysis could potentially impact some of this wording here, depending on what the outcome is, so.
But that's the next step.
Exactly, yeah.
So you feel that due to environmental constraints, blah, 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 that includes your critical areas, correct? And on line 13 and 14. Okay. Unless somebody else wants to comment on that, I would move down to line 28. And my question is 1,065 unit surplus. I'm trying to figure out the numbers where that unit surplus was, and maybe I'm, like it says 221 was 4135 dwelling units.
Again, this language is all just taken directly from the buildable lands report, so that's, this entire section is basically crafted based on that report. So it's just reporting numbers.
But where I'm concerned of is what a unit surplus, that means an overbuilt, underbuilt. So you see what I'm
No,
just
not, I don't, no, not really. I think this is basically saying that to meet the there is still capacity. There is, the surplus is the extra capacity that we have beyond meeting the targets. That's what the numbers mean.
Right.
To help.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
oh, I see. So, but like building capacity or unit, something just surplus in.
I'm reading it and it makes sense to me. I guess
Oh.
if it's not making sense to
I
you or
don't
any of
know.
the
Maybe I'm
commissioners,
the
we
only
can add
one
some
that's-
words in there.
I see if you look back up at the first sentence there that says that we have 3,070 housing units, our growth target. But I looked at that, if you add in, net that against the capacity of 4,135, that's how you get the 1065. That may be the finance guy talking.
No,
Others may
that's
not
why
find
you're,
that quite as.
that's why you're here and should be reappointed. Yeah. Well, you have more historical knowledge than anyone else on this mission, so that is an important feature, whether you like it or not. Being old is sometimes good, Mike. And you're younger. Okay, so I'll leave it there. I accept it. That's fine. I'm moving on. Any other comments? So now we're to goals and objectives. Goal 1. Okay, goal 1.6.4. line, that's page 17. Line 18 through 21. I'm just a little confused. Says phasing out heavy manufacturing and light industrial uses, encourage mixed uses. Clean, light manufacturing uses. I just wanted to know where the plywood company fits in. Or does it?
Oh, this was from Commissioner Dorian, so I don't know if.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Dorian, I'll throw this at you.
I don't remember this one. I can't recall what I was trying to get at.
That's okay.
Do you want to leave it here or do we want to leave it here?
Well, I'll jump in and say, I had a little concern reading this. We say consistent with the city's climate action plan. Basically, we don't want to support heavy industry manufacturing. Who is it can arrive out of the climate action plan? I think it may arrive out of our thoughts that we want to create more housing. And see, it said this elsewhere, that as these use.
And just for context, so he commented, whether he remembers it or not, here's the bullet phasing out of heavy manufacturing. So this is to reinforce the third bullet. That's the one that's in the middle of the screen. So that's okay if you don't remember, Commissioner Dorian.
Yeah, I'm trying to back at the. Sorry.
Okay, so what are we going to do with this? I just want to make, my whole question is, where does the plywood place fit in this? Is it light industrial? It's not heavy manufacturing, that's for sure. Clean, light manufacturing use? Got a big
really
truck.
distribution.
Just a commercial.
Fabricated.
Yeah. So we can just, don't worry about it. Okay, it's distribution.
Maybe we
have-
can change the policy to reflect L12, which is to phase out heavy manufacturing and
Yeah.
industrial uses in favor of mixed uses, commercial and residential, and clean light manufacturing. If you phrase the policy that way, it is consistent with L12 rather than, because I think this is broader to say you want to phase out all kinds of industry, and I don't think that's true.
So Commissioner Dorian, with that in mind, do you want to still propose this amendment?
So just trying to understand, so the proposal would be to remove
Add it.
the policy entirely, or
Yeah,
to,
if you
oh,
still,
I see.
if you, based on what Director Bent said, that it was covered in another area.
Yeah. In that case, I think it's fine. We can remove it.
Leave it.
Or we can, it's referenced in future land uses on page
Oh, okay.
12, lines 25 and 26. And what I'm suggesting is the policy language could reflect that
Yes.
same language.
Yeah, I would agree with that idea.
So
Yeah.
that would be with that intent, that would be an admin change. Is that all right with you?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the intent.
Okay, so policy LU 1.6.4 will be drafted by the commission at our direction to be consistent with the other climate action kinds of goals in the other paragraph policy. All right, we'll move on then. Commissioner Olson.
There's a very small clerical thing that could be just an administrative change, but on line 16 on page 18, policy LU 1.8.3, adjusting maximize transportation related noise impacts near residential and critical areas to minimize. I think that was the typo on my end potentially when I sent it out, so I apologize for that.
So that's administrative. Yep.
Yes.
Line, just officially, so I read it in, line 16. So on that same page, 18 on line 35, goes through all the blah, blah, blahs, and then it goes, when designating zoning locations to accommodate growth. So is growth, do we have to say in that, at the end of the paragraph, a adjective about growth or adverb, whatever? Like light growth. Appropriate growth.
I noted down below, these are policies that come from the climate action element. So, I mean, we can modify it, but these are ones that I'm pulled into the land use to just reemphasize this.
So it's in the climate action plan, which means it's probably some of it's in the climate action element.
Well, it's from the climate action element is what
Oh,
I
it
state on
is.
the bottom. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm good.
Oh, and I just realized I need to change those.
So
It says
go-
CA. Oops. Yeah.
Good, goal 2. We'll go to, oh, Commissioner Banaziski.
I brought a question. This is page 19, line 8. I had brought a question here about a potential edit or edits, but if it is this, if it came from the climate
Yeah.
action element and you want them to stay the same, I understand. I will just note for the record that the things I was thinking of is I see that we're moving increasingly toward calling the housing type middle housing instead of missing middle. And so I
Right.
wondered about that. And I understand these things are always evolving. And then the other thing I wondered is about you saying on line 9, allow for broader housing types in identified residential zones instead of single family zones, since we presumably won't have single family zones.
Yeah, I think in the context of, because of the,
Oh,
this was adopted, I think before,
HB 1110.
well, no,
No?
not necessarily, but I think these were crafted, addressing climate action at the time when it was adopted, but however, because I don't know, I'm kind of going in circles here, but what I'm trying to get at is we'd like to be consistent with how we've been addressing these in the housing element and this. So I agree with changing it to middle
Middle
housing, not missing middle. And I think I also agree with just residential zones.
Oh, you're agreeing with me.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, because single family isn't essentially going to be.
I just thought that you were
Yeah.
going to tell me that we couldn't change it for some reason. So
Well,
then when
no,
you
I
got to
mean-
the end and said you were, I was like, oh, he agrees.
No, I think we don't have to do these policies verbatim exactly as they are in the other element, as long as they capture the intent of what was drafted to be consistent with them. But I think just by changing these couple of things,
It's okay.
it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well,
Yep.
then I would advocate for that.
Yeah. That's an editorial fix.
Great, thank you.
We're good. So let's goal 2. I do have a question about special study areas. And on the other map, it was deleted. So are these still, is that what you classify them as? They're not on the land use map. And we're down at page 23 at a
Okay.
bunch of these. Special study area, there you see it. Yeah,
Oh.
as an example.
The question is,
Well, it says on the land use maps that they've been deleted. On that map that I asked the question, it doesn't match the environmental stuff. And you said, no, that's just land use or,
wait a minute, let's just make sure, so I'm with you now on where you are on special study areas, and which map are you referring to?
okay, I'm going to it right now. The map. I thought I saw it on the Kenmore existing land use, but maybe other map.
On page 10, LU-2, existing land use, is that what you're referring to?
That's what I thought I saw it at. At that. I'm in an error. Good. Oh, Commissioner Vanderleen, he's going to save me.
Page 20, line,
Oh,
beginning line
NA.
24. This classification allows housing types and densities affordable to families earning 80 less of the AMI. So we're not going to allow developers or property owners to build a house that would be unaffordable to somebody outside of 80%. Is that a right? That whole section just, I don't understand what futurizes political position. Something we can put into the city code.
Go ahead, Commissioner Banzinski.
I think that as of right is a planning term. And I think it means something in that world than it does to maybe lay readers. Is that right?
Yeah, as of right generally is without condition. So there's like conditional uses or just outright permitted. So if you've heard of that term, so as of right is that's kind of the context of it.
Yeah, so I guess in that context, I read this as saying that developers can provide housing at 80% or less.
Right.
They don't need to ask for any special permission to do it. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could remove the as of right, just to lessen the muddiness.
To not confuse the lay
Yeah,
reader. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. It's true. As of right is something that us planner folk use. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and it makes
Okay.
the rest of it, if we this classification allows, juxtaposition of allows and by right, that gave me a different flavor. So I think if we strike the by right, which is
Okay.
something we decided to do earlier,
Earlier.
we have some similar language.
Yeah.
That would be consistent.
If I turn on my mic, that's what we'll. Next, anyone?
This is on L20 as well. It is up on lines 8 through 16. This is an area in text where I see us talking about middle housing in R1s, which is the place that I have the most concern about them, and then R4 along the Sammamish River. I don't really know what to make of it, as it seems like this isn't. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Commissioner Olson.
I am wondering if this is something that kind of goes back to our future discussions on these topics with how this is implemented. To me, a duplex, a triplex, a townhouse, or even clustered units isn't necessarily an issue in these critical areas, given to me, it's more the scale of the construction and the site impacts, right? Like if there's two smaller units, but the building's the same size as one single family home, that is more what I'm looking for these R1, sorry, yeah, that's what I would look for R1 to R4 districts adjacent to critical areas, where, you know, we're not putting additional restrictions on middle housing, we're putting restrictions on the type of development that is allowable in those areas, period, right? And so a person could build a single family home, or they could build a duplex, but the max size of both of those would be the same.
If I just might make a comment on this, this is another section of this that's a little bit challenging to nail down until we get the implementing regulations adopted, because I think Debbie and I realize that we may have to go back. We mentioned it earlier in the meeting, is that we may have to come back and tweak some of this language again next year. So I understand the challenges of trying to figure all this out now, but we just haven't quite gotten to the regulations. And once we do, that'll thus clarify some of these land use classifications a little bit more, and then we can tailor it a little, tighten it up. So.
Any further comments? None? Okay. Commissioner Dorian, did you get your question answered on line 26, page 22? 22.
I think I did. Yeah, I believe I did. It was an auction use, I think.
And also you did find my special area thing on that other chart, but it doesn't matter. It still exists, right?
Oh, and we're, I just scrolled down to page 25. Commissioner Dorian had a question on number 9 related to Lake Point.
Yeah, I was just interested, given that there has been a renewed focus and a renewed envisioning of Lake Point, I was just wondering if these bullet points were still descriptive of the intended uses, which if they are, that's great, but I was just looking at those and not sure.
It, I think that's still reflective of the overall vision.
Did you hear that?
Yes. Yeah, in that case, that's great. That's all I was checking.
Good there. Can I ask staff a question on starting on line 26, page 26? There's a list of things should include the following elements. We do all that when we're doing this plan, land use element, we provide all that information. X, LU 2.1. Here's the list.
Oh. Yeah, this is from code, I think, where it's
Kenmore code or state code?
this is stuff that's required of applicants. I don't understand why it's kind of listed here, but
Well,
it's just outlining the process of how we do these amendments each year. So
we okay.
it's just detailing it. I don't know if it's required, but it's there.
If it's required to be there because of code, that's fine. It's a lot of work. It's in your staff report probably, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is
Right.
required as of an applicant. So
As an
somebody like
applicant?
a school district that came in with their amendment, they had to go through this process. Again, whether or not that's something we need to keep here in the comp plan as policy, I don't necessarily think it's necessary if we've outlined it somewhere else, but it's there nonetheless.
Okay, well, I just leave
Yeah.
that to your
Yeah.
and Director Bent's viewpoint, because honestly, you all are stuck with all this detail and we get to read it and
Yeah.
but I'll leave that, Goal 3. Hearing no more on goal 2. Goal 3. Okay, Diane's goal 4. Then implementation strategies. Now, is there anything else? Mr. Dorian, you good? Entertain a motion to finish work on land use element and refer it for an October 15th public hearing before the Planning Commission.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded that we finish work and move this to October 15th planning hearing, public hearing. Is there any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 It's a unanimous vote. Done. Okay, so now we're going to take the paper one.
And just for introduction, since introduction to the introduction section, I set myself up for that. This should be hopefully relatively short. However, I'll just wanted to make for the record that this is not an element, but is a section of the comprehensive plan that just provides the context of the following elements to come after this section. So just for, for discussion, I wanted to at least give the opportunity to the commission to suggest or review any comments. If you don't have any tonight, we could follow the same process that we did before. If you have comments to give to me prior to the hearing, you can still, recommend that this go to hearing, of course, but if there's some changes that you want to make, either substantive or grammatical or things like that. But really all this does is explains the various types of elements, and that's really it.
Okay, so what I would suggest, if I may, is that we hopefully quickly go through this. And if we have something that we can identify, make a change tonight quickly, then we'll do that. Otherwise, we go to hearing, and immediately after the hearing, then commissioners will do what we did for these last two elements that we just finished. That way we don't have proposals for amendments prior to hearing.
Yeah, perfect.
Nice way to do it, because I don't want people to say, why didn't you tell us? So, right, we're on page 1. Page 2. Oh, that's a long page. I don't know if we need an extra 10 minutes for that.
Anybody have any comments on that?
Page 3 is the map that shows the city of Kenmore. Is that right? That's our city.
In all its glory, yes.
Oh,
Hey, I did have one on page 1.
oh,
briefly.
page
Okay.
1. Yay, he saved us.
I don't know the terminology, but as well as mandating regular updates every 10 years, I think we now have what they call it, the implementation progress report. I think it's worth adding a note in about that in there somewhere. That it's not just we update it every 10 years and then we forget about it. There is actually, we're now held accountable in the midpoint as well. I can't remember what that's called. The thing that 5 years after this year we get the check-in, but
Looking that up. So why don't, while he's looking that up, and then you'll let us know when
Yeah, I'll find the language for that. I believe Commissioner Dorian is correct. We were just talking about that on a call with Commerce, so I'll find the exact language and throw that in there. But yeah, there's a midpoint check.
Okay, so do we accept that? And we'll just include it in the yellow as of tonight. Okay, great.
Yep.
So, because I saw you typing away to check him out, but, okay, so we're on page 4. Page 4, yes, Commissioner Banasinski.
This is a very small editorial thing. On page 4, lines 26 and 27, since we're striking the third bullet point, that little orphan and at the end of 27 can move up to 26. And then there can be a period at the end of 27, yeah.
So now we're going to go to page 5. So these elements that you've got here listed, you're taking right off the element in the first introduction paragraph, right?
Or something similar to it, yeah, the wording, it might not be exact, but it's close. It just briefly describes what the purpose is. So it may follow exactly the purpose or not, but yeah.
It's the same
Mhm.
drift.
Yep.
I just said that so that it's clear on the record that these are not new things or
No.
replacements.
And you'll notice
clarifying.
too, I mean, the reason why I realized that we needed to go into that, one, because we've added some new things, but two, everything was called a sub-element and we've changed it to element, so needed to get rid of that too.
Okay, page 6 is now moved to page 7. Commissioner Vanderling.
Yes, the section economic development, a small editorial change on the second line, line 32. I'd suggest a comma between enhance and broaden the city's tax base.
Oh, yeah.
And for readability, I really like the sentence, the second sentence. I think it really states very well what the purpose of the economic development is. I would suggest moving that up to the first sentence, and then maybe editing this current first sentence, remove purpose of and we start the sentence. The economic development element is to. So you provide a little more detail in that first sentence.
Oh, good.
Now be the first.
Okay.
Commissioner Olson.
I don't think this is something that's going to change on this document at this time, but I did want to bring it up after the last meeting with council that the commission had. But on line 28 on page 6, the shoreline element is implemented through the shoreline master program. And I remember Councilmember Culver's comment asking about oh my gosh, now stormwater master plan, I think is what he was talking about then, but I'm wondering if we could potentially look at just in the long run, shifting master to main or something along those lines. I don't think we can necessarily change that now because it wouldn't be consistent. But bringing that up.
Commissioner Banczewski.
Yeah, with apologies, this is also on page 6 because I was lagging behind. But I have a question about it's under the community design section on line 7. in 6 and 7, it says, while ensuring compatible development. Compatible with what? I think I'm either tired or there's something missing that would help me understand, or both. While ensuring compatible.
I'm just going back to the actual,
Development that's kind of compatible with itself or with other developments nearby.
I'm just looking at the actual element itself and see where the term compatible comes up. There's a goal, it says promote compatible development in residential neighborhoods. Other policy, it says, there are amendments to permitted uses, lot, building, dimensional standards, street allowances, and other requirements to achieve compatible development in single, multi, mixed use districts. Ensure that new housing is compatible with surrounding development is an objective. So it comes up in
Okay.
a few areas, but
Yeah, so this means development that is kind of compatible with the surrounding development in any given
so
zone. Is
you
that,
could
does
say
that's what it means?
surrounding development.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so we're on page 6. Anything more on page 6?
Super tactical. The economic development just needs the word element after it in the sub.
Oh, yep.
head.
Thank you.
Page 7.
Oh, here's another one.
Anything, then we're on page 8, and I would like to hit the first one on one. I just want to say how our esteemed director is so right on that on 1-8, page 30, it says the policies often use should rather than shall, which is to use should in the plan. The word shall would then be used in implementing ordinances and codes. Oh, you know, you had this vision of this was coming. Why don't we ask her the hard questions? She knows all the answers. I read that. It's just kind of laughable. Well, we need to cut that out and give it to oh, it's Deborah's thing. Oh yeah. I'll cut this out and put it on her dais when we show up. Oh no. Sorry. It's going to be in the. Oh, Commissioner Banazinski wants
is
to
on-
enlarge on that.
This is, no, I want to move on. This is, this is on page 8, just another simple one, utilities element, needs an element there. Yeah, yeah, I'm sure you were on it after Commissioner Dorian said it, yeah.
That called a Dorian? A Dorian. Well, you're going to be famous for 20 years. You know, that's probably longer than a DeLorean lasts. Oh, Commissioner Vanderleen.
Oh, I'm tiring, so this is probably going to be the last one.
We
But I think
all
I
are.
got along. Just a simple format editing thing. Under format of goals, objectives, and policies, which listed as goals, objectives, and policies. Goals, objectives, and policies in the heading, but in the body, it looks like we've got goals, policies, and objectives. Maybe just reorder that and order it according to the way we actually present it. Plan. Policies first.
Well, yeah, we have, it is goal first, objective, then policy. But I can say goals, objectives, and policies.
Any further comments? Of course, Commissioner Bennett.
This is also just a very, very small edit on line 35. I think objective should be plural. Goals, objectives, and policies.
Oh.
Commissioner Olson, you're good? Me, not Olson, Commissioner Doran. Are you good? Good. Okay, is there any further discussion? Hearing none. I'll entertain a motion to conclude our work on comprehensive plan, the purpose of the comprehensive plan, and take it to public hearing on October 15th.
So move.
Been moved and second to finish our work for now on comprehensive purpose of the comprehensive plan, the introduction, and we'll have a public hearing on October 15th. Favors, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Good, I heard you, Dave. And so it's adopted. Is there anything more from our staff? That you're finished with us, aren't you? Yeah, that's good. So I do have one item for the good of the order. Looking at our schedule, December 17th is our of the month in December, and I mentioned before that we might have if our staff do not drag us into here for a meeting, which they have indicated that it's not on in their plans, but if it would be fine, that we'd have a party on the 17th, and I, with the permission of the commission, I will send emails not with regard to any policy or discussion of policy, but only to set the date and the place. And we would include our staff as well as the newly appointed members that are coming. And by the way, there are 15 applicants, including our senior Vice Chair Vanderling, our historical repertoire there. And then, and they're going to select interviews, candidates for interviews next week on Monday. I don't know when it's been set for actual public interviews yet, but just wanted to give you an update. Is there any more update on that than I just said?
Interviews are October 21st.
Interviews October 21st. Want to see and hear our newest planning commissioners sweat under the council. That's an opportunity. Most of them don't sweat anyway. So, you know, we gave up on that once we got the point. All right, any further elements for the good of Commissioner Vanderlyn?
A question of clarification. We talked about having a potential meeting on November 8th. Decide to do that, or we decide not to do that?
No, the staff has decided
Not to do that. Okay.
and we've already canceled the 5th. Good. Please note, like we've done before, that we may pass those the same night because we need to get that to the city council as soon as possible, right? So that you can schedule a hearing before our next meeting, so. October 15th, we're gonna finish those two elements and the introduction. No further conversation. So, ladies and gentlemen, and our esteemed clerks, we're gonna beat 10 o'clock again. It is 9:59 and the meeting is adjourned. That's okay. I'm still bringing you things.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Dave.